Welcome to Roll of the Dice, a Game Master's Guide to Better Role-Playing. I'm Dan.
And I am Lee.
In this episode, we are talking about world building in an already established setting. Our first episode drives into how we make the world in any RPG setting you own.
It's going to be, I think, a couple episodes we're going to talk about world building since it's such a big subject. And this is our first listener request episode from Ben. So thanks, Ben. Again, I thank you for making us do all this work. But it really is worth it. And it really is a helpful, I guess, subject when you're role-playing that you want to do. Like you're getting away from the written adventure in a book or module or whatever you want to call it.
Even you have to world build even when you have or you're using the books. It's still a difficult task to do because there's so many things you have to build outside of what the book gives you.
Very true.
So hopefully we'll help.
All right, so how do we get started on that?
Well, you want to choose where your adventure is going to start. That's always a good place to begin.
What I like to do is just sometimes look through the book and just read everything about it, like the settings that they give you in the book, and just find some place that you seem kind of interesting. Maybe in the book it says something like, this town is under constant attack from orcs after however many years of peace. And you're like, oh, that seems kind of interesting, and you might think I could start an adventure there. Or just something that catches your eye, or you want the characters to start somewhere unusual, maybe a place that they have never explored before.
I think books have gotten a lot better at including a little more of the world setting into them. I remember a long time ago when I would get a book for role playing and I'd read it and it'd give you the characters, the archetypes, but it would never give you very much of the world itself. So you pretty much had to build the world yourself. Mm-hmm. Around what the characters and stuff they gave you, and then you had to buy the extra books to build the settings and stuff. But now you got more. Sometimes they got stories, they got little anecdotes, they have background, a general background of the world that you can go through, and it gives you a lot more to start from. But you still need to choose that area to kind of plan and build a little bit better.
Yeah, even famous NPCs that are part of the book, part of the setting, like, oh, they come from this town, or they're currently in the town doing something. And you could be like, well, if my players know this famous NPC, they might be able to interact with them, and there could be something fun with that.
I tend to try to keep people away from the main NPCs at first, but that's tough.
Well, usually I do it as more of they interact, not having the famous or higher level NPC along with them. It's more of it's Eleminster. I think that's a famous NPC from D&D. Yeah. He's a wizard, right?
Yeah, a wizard.
Yep. And they know who that is. That's kind of cool.
I didn't really necessarily mean that the NPC goes with them, but I mean, if you show them too powerful of an NPC at first, I kind of feel like sometimes, especially if they know them, they might latch on to them.
Like little kids putting their arms around his take me with you. You're so cool. I love you. We're just, your characters become groupies. It's kind of awesome. But okay, so we're going to figure out what area we're going to start our big adventure in. And I usually like to start small, really get the players to know not all the info, but I guess you as the GM getting all the info you can from that area, whether it be looking through the book and sometimes just going online. Maybe the book doesn't have enough information that you're looking for. It just has a general idea of, okay, in this area, they harvest wheat. They're really more of a farmer setting, so they're kind of poor. They've been at peace for a while now. They no longer have orcs attacking them. But maybe that's all it says, and there's maybe 2,000 people there of varying races. But if you go online, sometimes you might be able to find a little bit more information, get some pictures, which is really helpful. Maybe print out a map if the book doesn't have a map on that area, and sometimes get more history of it. It all depends on the setting, if how in-depth they went on this area, or sometimes maybe not at all, or not enough.
Yeah, it's when it's not enough is when you get confused. I think too much information can be kind of a hindrance to you too, because all right, I got this guy's doing that. They harvest wheat in this area, but there's a wizard that protects them from the orcs. He's in this town. I got to watch out for it. There's also these church religious groups that believe that they're doing, the good and keeping the orcs out of there, but they're kind of at, it can be too much. So I like to contain things into a smaller area sometimes. Just set up the first, when you're beginning into a small town or small area, and limit too much information. I mean, you still want to set things up, but I worry about getting too much information that you confuse people as to what your initial problem or thing you want your characters to go after is.
Just dole out a little bit of information. So let's just say that you pick a spot somewhere. Your player characters, they know it just because they've played this game before, but you have to remind them, do your characters know it? That's a different thing. And if their characters don't know it, what you can do is just give out a little bit of information here and there. So all you do is when you're setting it up, you describe the town that they're coming into, and you describe maybe one thing, saying, yes, it's the church of whatever is kind of in control. And that's really all you say. And then as they keep going through the town, meeting new NPCs that may or may not be in the book, then you can start adding stuff and say, oh yes, they have been under attack from orcs before, and you kind of can do it slower that way. So like you said, not overwhelm your players right away with all this information, like, oh, you got to know everything that's going on in this town right away.
I guess as a GM, you want to know everything that's going on.
Yeah, that's what I meant. As a GM, you need to know what's going on.
But you just don't want to try to throw everything at your player characters right in the beginning so they understand the area. You know, like this is everything that happens in the area. It's just like you're at this house. They might mention the church, and then they go into the problem that they have that they want you to investigate.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. And so then you determine, well, I, as always, start small. But then you want to think, am I going to just have them in this town? Maybe they just solve the town's problem, whatever that may be. Or are they going to start to leave this town? This is just the beginning of their adventure. And I've had fun just doing it where you're just in a single town or small area and have had a lot of fun with adventures like that.
I was thinking about that. Like if you build something to a small town and it was like in a sci-fi adventure that, you know, things that I try to run, most of the time it takes place on a space station or a spaceship. So you can't really travel outside of that world bubble that you created unless something happens or the ship goes somewhere or the situation the GM sets up, you know, allows you to leave the space station. So yeah, I kind of like to start containing people in an adventure and then you can travel to a new containment bubble for the next adventure. I think, you know, so starting in a small area and building up that area, I think is a lot better than trying to build a world. You want to know what happens outside of that bubble, but you know, most of the time there was, when I tried running a D&D game, I created a small town bubble and the first thing people did was they left. It's like, crap. Now I have to figure out where they're going because I didn't create anything outside of that bubble.
Yep.
So I was like, all right, you travel and you, this time we just kind of run into some kind of like encounter, an ogre or a cave you have to explore because I don't know what to do outside of anything else.
That's an interesting problem that you just talked about is, yeah, your idea as a GM is I want to just have you in this town, and now your players have chose to leave. Well, I guess there's different tools to wrap them back into your setting, and sometimes you have to cheat. Maybe you say, well, they can't leave because they say if it was a D&D setting, there's too many orcs or there's dangerous things where they're kind of trapped now in the town with everyone else now, or fog that comes in it teleports them back into the center of town now, and if it's a horror setting of some kind. You're like, no, now you're trapped with everyone else, ha ha ha. Which is lame, but or you can even ask your players, hey, I kind of had, this is my whole idea.
Leave this town because I had so much things planned for you, and this messes me up.
This kind of messes me up. I'm sorry, but can you just go back to town for whatever reason? Maybe you forgot one of our player characters there. He went to the bathroom and we just kind of left it. Oh yeah, that's right. We forgot about Timmy. He's still in the truck stop bathroom, and head on back. But yeah, what kind of problems does the area have? Which might be kind of interesting. And it might be written down in the book, which is great. Like I said, maybe they're under attack from orcs. The king is kind of a jerk. Maybe the undead are starting to rise when they haven't done that before. All these different little hooks that maybe in the book can trigger in a beginning of an adventure in your imagination. That's usually how it does it for me. It's, this would be kind of fun. The players haven't fought undead right now, so this might be a good spot for them to start in.
And I think when I was thinking about like what problems are in the area, like you might have all those giant problems where, you know, there is a giant orc infestation, but they're just being protected by the wizard, and the church is at large against trying to like kind of take over. All that stuff is happening, and you might be at this little town, and the thing that sets it off is, you know, a death of a cattle, and you're like, hey, investigate this death of the cattle, and you find out that maybe an orc had killed the cattle. Now you're getting into the bigger adventure. That was the hook that kind of pulls you into whichever storyline the GM's telling. So, it's like always start with this small little investigation or small little something. I mean, you could do a giant battle too. That's possible.
Sure.
I guess, but there's always some kind of situation that pushes you into whatever storyline you want the player characters to go on.
And play it
off.
off.
You have to find that.
You have to find exactly what's the mystery here, what's going on, and playing off that is, let's just say that you were already in this small town for a while. You maybe already solved their problem, so they're starting to get to know you, the townspeople and whatnot. Or you're brand new to the town and it just seems normal. But then something that maybe is or is not in the book, you could add like a dragon attack or people start disappearing. Whatever, you can just add something new if you want and make that kind of interesting.
Yeah, you don't have to go by what the book tells you as far as what, they might be, there's an orc problem in this area, but you don't want to do an orc problem. You want to do a powerful wizard tower that you have to defeat.
Yeah, you already did that orc problem, and now there's another thing that's happening. It doesn't have to be something grand, of course. It could just be townsfolk interaction, too, which would be kind of fun. All these different NPCs, you could just have a lot of fun just hanging out in this town for whatever reason that you got attached. I know I'm using a town as an example, and you had used a space station. Town in a space station
was just,
keeping
it's easy
small.
for a GM, I think, to contain someone on kind of a space station because there's just no ships leaving, or your ship is being fixed and won't be fixed for a week.
Yeah, and just getting into other settings besides, a fantasy setting or Wild West. Or, I mean, this town could be taking place in modern time. I mean, you're out in North Texas or something. It's just, I think it fits almost any campaign setting type. Just starting small is what I mean.
Yeah, starting small is always a good way to start in any game.
Definitely. Oh, no, I do it. I mean, I'll definitely build off of that. And even just as a GM, you can start small with, all right, like I said, they're going to start here, write down interesting NPCs that are in the book, getting pictures from them, getting their stats down. Not everybody, just what you think they're going to interact with the most. Like just maybe just the barkeep, the mayor, the trader who's in there, or someone interesting, maybe like the town bum, giving them something interesting to do. But then have an idea of who else is in this town, have that written down, but not maybe all the information you need, because then, like you said, the players might just talk a little bit and then leave the town on to the next thing.
I kind of like when I create NPCs in an area, I say, okay, the towns or the marketplace, the trader, the guy who trades goods, he's kind of like, a nice guy who's always very helpful or something, or he's very conniving and wants to cheat everyone out of their money.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of get this little description. I mean, you mentioned getting images from online. So if you wanted to get images for certain people, NPCs in the area, that's great too, because then the PCs get an idea of what they look like and who they're interacting with. And then when you give them the personality through by the way they talk or the way they interact, they kind of get a better idea who this person is. So I don't always build a whole list of everyone and
never
family histories and things like that. I just say, this guy's like this, simple sentence. This person's like this guy I met on the street. This person's, like my friend. He's kind of, this guy's like my father. All this stuff that just in my head, I know how I'm going to start a general interaction. Players walk in.
Yep, and you're adding all these NPCs that aren't necessarily in the book because, of course, not every book is going to have every single person that is in this town already written down for you. They understand you got to do some work as a GM. Sometimes they're generic people. If you don't want to have an interaction when you're going in to buy a bale of hay or adventuring equipment, I guess would be a better example. They don't need to be conniving at all unless you want that to add something to the story, or it is part of the mystery of what's going on. Maybe they're acting a little bit weird, a little bit more strange than normal if you already know who they are, I guess.
When I ran a D&D game, I think I had a guild. So I mean, I had an interaction saying, hey, there's an assassin guild in this town or something like that. And somehow they were interacting with a person from the guild, or an assassination happened, trying to figure out who it was. And suddenly they wanted to infiltrate the assassin guild and get inside it and figure out, become part of it because one of the guys was a thief. And, I didn't have that well developed. I'm like, there was an assassin guild, but now what do I do? Because I have to figure out a little more about this assassin guild that I didn't have planned before. And it kind of threw me for a loop. So I had to quickly develop it as we were going. And I don't know if I did a good job at it, because I think it was just like, hey, you enter a room and there's people and there's assassins and they're part of this guild. It's like, hey, they're not very sneaky. They're just hanging out like normal people do. So I mean, you can try to develop a lot of things and little, and have little bits for it, but you're still sometimes going to be thrown for a loop because you're going to have to develop things more depending where the characters go.
And that's fine. Is when you're thrown for a loop and you didn't have this planned out. You knew that there was a thieves guild in the town, but you weren't expecting it to happen, and now you're improvising what's going on, and it's not exactly what's in the book. That's fine. Your world building as best you can on the fly in this example, and it's so very hard to do exactly right. Like knowing everything as a GM is done right and possible, and being completely that prepared. In that instance, you could pause and say, just give me a second. I didn't expect that. And go into the book, open it up, and research real quick. I don't like doing that because it really slows the game down and the flow. And you always got to look like you're in charge as a GM because the players, they smell fear. No, I'm joking.
Like, I got him. I can do what I want now.
Oh, no, he doesn't know about this Thieves Guild. Hoo-ah.
I'll tell him what I want this Thieves Guild to be like.
Mm-hmm. And I'll take over. Yeah, world building is really, really tough.
You for that. And even if things don't fall together later on, when you come back to the town or later on, you're like, hey, what about that Thieves Guild? It's like, whatever. They left town. Yeah, they'll forgive you.
Yeah, it's fine. I liked your idea of bubble the bubble. That's really good. Going from a small place to another small place to keep it easy for the GM to know all this information. But sometimes you want to have them interacting. Say they're traveling from one town to the next. And now you need to know what's going on in between that area. Are there mountains? Yeah. Or is there a cold river that comes through that has plenty of fish for them to eat? Or is it that they just have to get into a train and just travel on through, and there's may or may not be any problems in the area?
It's almost like as you're world building, you create several of I don't know why I'm using this analogy of a bubble, but using several bubbles to create the world. So you might start in a small town, which is one bubble, and you create that town for the adventure. And as you create the next adventure, your world building that next bubble. Either you're expanding the bubble you already created, or they get on the train. That train becomes that bubble. If you know you're going to have interaction on the train, you have some adventure you want to have in the train, you start building the train and build that bubble for them to interact with. Mm-hmm. Now you have those two bubbles, and you start building more and more. And sometimes, just to go with the analogy, sometimes those bubbles get close and they form one big bubble.
Bubbles
and bubbles galore.
I like we're just talking about bubbles and we had not really thought about it before, but it is a really good way of thinking about it, of expanding that bubble, adding more air into it, and then it pops, and then you fail and forget everything that you had planned out because the players did something else completely different.
Unless you're like Lee and you write down everything after an episode.
Oh, well, I do that.
To your players.
Gotta know what's going on. All right. Well, I think that was pretty good for at least this episode, but we're going to continue talking about different types of world building. Yeah, this one was world building in an already established setting, but we're going to talk about another world building. But first, before we tell you what our next episode is going to be about, we want you to rate and review us on iTunes or wherever you get this podcast. That would be really cool if you could do that.
Yeah, it'd be fantastic.
Fantastic. If you'd like to send us questions, you can do that. rollofthedicepodcast@gmail.com or on Facebook at Roll of the Dice.
And we also have a website now.
That is what's the important part, and I didn't write that down in our notes. We have a website. What's the name of the website? Which is, just go to that instead.
Yeah, we have a new website. It's rollofthedice.com, ROLE of the dice.com.
Yes, and what do we have on that website?
We list all our episodes, yeah, so you can go there to find all of our episodes.
And they can play them from that website, right?
They can play them from that website, or they can click on them to go to the link to SoundCloud. I believe there is the RSS feed for iTunes, which I'm not sure if that works or not. But if you want to try and tell us, you can go there and see if you can sign up to iTunes through the website. And you can also email us through there, contact us through the website.
Yeah, I think from here on out, I'll write my notes. Just go to our website and make it easy on everybody. Good job. All right, what's our next episode?
Our next episode will continue on in the world building category, and we're going to talk a little more about changing things up.
Changing things up. We're going to talk about already an established setting from a book, but now we're going to really mix it up. We're going to change some things in that world.
The world building.
Yeah.
It's not Minecraft.
No.
All right. Remember to keep shaking those dice.
And may roll be true.